She cut my oxygen line. I rasped to the 911 operator, my voice barely a whisper. I have her on camera. She came into my house and cut my oxygen line. There was a long pause on the other end, the kind where you can tell someone's weighing if this is a prank or a real emergency. It wasn't a prank. I was sprawled on the floor, gasping like a stranded fish, clawing for air while the footage looped on my phone. Valerie Thornton, neighborhood terror and HOA president of Oakridge Estates, stepping into my living room uninvited, crouching by my machine, and snipping the line like she was pruning a shrub. My life support had apparently violated HOA aesthetic standards. A week earlier, I'd come home from the hospital after a brutal respiratory infection. Not COVID, not the flu, but a vicious mix of pneumonia and asthma that left me intubated for 3 days. Sophie, my wife, wheeled me through the front door with a portable oxygen unit trailing behind like a loyal dog. I wasn't dying, but without that airflow, I might as well have been. We set up a home system, simple tubing, discreet tanks, one quiet machine humming beside the couch. I thought I was safe. But I'd underestimated Valerie. Valerie Thornton had a permanent scowl, like she'd been born frowning and never stopped. She was the type to call the cops over a kid's lemonade stand being unpermitted. The kind who'd measure your mailbox height with a ruler. When she saw my oxygen setup through the window, her lips puckered like she'd bitten a lemon. The next day, a note appeared, not mailed, not typed, but taped to my window with red duct tape. It read, "Medical equipment visible from the street violates HOA Code 5.2c. Please conceal or remove." The board. I should have ignored her. Sophie wanted to tear it down and burn it, but I was exhausted. Recovery does that, it makes you patient and impatient all at once. I moved the tank just behind the curtains and thought that'd be enough. It wasn't. The next few days were uneasy. Valerie started hovering literally. She'd walk her terrier past our house 10 times a day, stopping to glare at our windows. Sometimes she'd pretend to adjust her scarf. Other times, she just stood there, squinting at the blinds like she was daring me to breathe too loudly. Sophie started parking our car at an angle to block her view. We laughed about it, nicknamed her the Watcher, but I didn't feel safe. Then came the night I woke up suffocating. It felt like drowning on land, my chest seized, my hands fumbled at the nasal cannula. No airflow. I ripped the tubes off and tried to stand, but I collapsed against the coffee table, vision blurring. I dragged myself across the carpet, instinct driving me, and reached the machine. It was dead. Not a power outage, the lights were on, but the machine flashed a red warning. I traced the line and saw it, cut clean, not frayed, not torn, sliced with precision. My only clear thought was to check the footage. We'd installed a security system last year after a string of mailbox thefts in Oakridge Estates, full audio, wide-angle, motion-activated. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the app, and rewound to the last trigger. There she was, Valerie, at 2:12 a.m. She strode to the front door like she owned the place, used something, a key or a lockpick, and walked in. No gloves, no mask. She went straight to the machine, knelt down, pulled out a pair of scissors, and snipped the line like she was unveiling a new park bench. Then she looked around, smiled, and left. That smile, it wasn't just smug. It was victorious. It lit a fire in me, not just fear, but fury. By the time the paramedics arrived, Sophie had burst in from her night shift, still in scrubs, her face a storm of rage. She'd gotten the 911 call mid-shift and nearly ran a red light getting home. She saw the tubing, the footage, and turned icy. Sophie doesn't yell, she gets quiet, deadly. "We're going to bury her," she said, voice like steel. Valerie was back the next morning, walking her dog in a silk robe like nothing had happened. Sophie stormed out to confront her. I watched from the living room, oxygen mask on, the security feed still up. Valerie smiled as Sophie marched across the lawn, then said, "I just wanted to restore the harmony of the neighborhood. Your husband's equipment is alarming some residents." Sophie didn't swing, she's not violent, but she got close enough to make Valerie stumble back into her rose bush. Valerie didn't know we had her on camera. She was still in denial, smiling like she'd done us a favor. I called the police that afternoon. Officer Ramirez arrived, the same one who'd helped with the mailbox thefts. He had a face that screamed, "I've seen it all," until I showed him the video. "She just walked in," he asked, like she'd popped in for coffee. I nodded. He stared at the screen, then at me. "Sir, are you saying this woman entered your home without permission, tampered with your medical equipment in the middle of the night, and you have it all recorded, HD, audio, timestamped?" He rewound the footage, played it again, and let out a dark chuckle when Valerie smiled at the camera on her way out. "I don't usually say this," he said, "but I think your HOA is about to get real quiet." Valerie didn't know she was caught, not yet. But things were about to change. I didn't just want justice. I wanted every smug, entitled step she'd taken to come crashing down on her perfectly manicured Oak Ridge Estates lawn. With the evidence we had and the community she'd terrorized for years, that crash was going to be loud. Sophie didn't waste a moment. Once Officer Ramirez left with the footage and a promise of charges, she turned into a force of nature. I was still on the couch, hooked to a backup oxygen unit, a blanket over me like a frail grandpa, but Sophie was a whirlwind, phone in one hand, notebook in the other. She made lists, neighbors to contact, witnesses, legal options. At the top, circled in red, Valerie Thornton. Sophie's an ER nurse, she's calm in chaos, but this wasn't a random patient. This was her husband. Someone had broken into our home while I slept and cut the line keeping me alive. Her anger wasn't loud, it simmered, calculated. I'd seen her this mad maybe twice before. Each time, someone ended up regretting crossing her. By noon, she'd filed a complaint with the HOA board, written a statement for the police, and booked a lawyer consultation. Meanwhile, Valerie was still parading around Oak Ridge Estates like royalty, even waving at our house that afternoon, her smile taunting. I wanted to shout, but I didn't have the breath. Instead, I watched the footage again, zooming in. Her eyes flicked to the camera, then away. The gleeful snip of the scissors. The way she brushed her sleeve, proud. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. That evening, we got a knock. It wasn't the police, it was Mrs. Evelyn, our next-door neighbor. She was 78, a retired software engineer with a mind sharper than most 30-year-olds. Known for her cherry pies and zero tolerance for HOA nonsense, she walked in with a flash drive and a cup of chamomile tea. "Heard what happened," she said, sitting without asking. "I'd like to help." Sophie blinked. "Help how?" Mrs. Evelyn grinned. "I've been running a little project, my own neighborhood watch. Valerie's been on my radar since she fined me for planting daisies instead of sod. I've got cameras, drones, night vision. And I've got audio from her backyard you'll want to hear." She plugged the flash drive into our TV. Infrared footage lit up the screen. Valerie, right after entering our home, muttering, "Maybe this'll teach him not to make the neighborhood look like a clinic." I clenched my fists. Sophie's jaw tightened so hard I thought it might snap. Valerie wasn't just enforcing rules, she had a vendetta. She thought she was teaching us a lesson. And now we had proof it was premeditated. Mrs. Evelyn sipped her tea. "Go public. Post the footage. Show everyone who she is." I shook my head. "Not yet. Let the police handle it first. I want this airtight." Sophie nodded, but added, "The HOA's hearing about this now." We drafted a letter, detailed, professional, with screenshots, timestamped stills, and transcribed audio. We highlighted Valerie's words, her break-in, and the medical emergency she caused. We emailed every board member, every neighbor, and our lawyer, with the subject, "Urgent, evidence of criminal activity by HOA board member." We hit send. The response was swift. By morning, 3 board members resigned. Another called to apologize, claiming they didn't know Valerie had gone this far. Two doubled down, saying we were smearing her name. Sophie laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. Valerie posted on the Oakridge Estates Facebook group, "Some residents are spreading false information and manipulating footage to create drama. Please trust your neighbors, not hysterics." Mrs. Evelyn, ever the quiet saboteur, commented, "Hey Valerie, do scissors count as gardening tools under HOA Code 5.2c? The post was deleted in minutes. That day, Officer Ramirez returned with a second officer, body camera rolling. "We're pursuing charges," he said. "Trespassing, destruction of medical property, reckless endangerment, possibly attempted manslaughter, depending on the DA." Sophie crossed her arms. "Good." Ramirez nodded at me. "You okay?" I lifted my mask, gave a weak thumbs up. "Still breathing." He smirked. "Let me know if she tries anything. Though I doubt she's feeling bold now." But Valerie didn't back down. That evening, we heard shouting. I peeked out the window. Valerie was on her porch, yelling into her phone, gesturing at our house. Neighbors watched, one even grabbing a lawn chair like it was a spectacle. She thought she was being targeted. Mrs. Evelyn texted us later. "She says the video's edited. Karen logic," she added. "She'll probably claim you edited the air out of your own lungs." We should have felt victorious, but I knew Valerie wasn't done. People like her don't accept consequences, they spin them. Sophie knew it too. That night, she walked in with a folder. "It's time we talked to a lawyer," she said. "If she wants a war, she's getting one." For the first time in days, I felt a spark of strength. Valerie thought we were weak, me, a sick man. Sophie, just a nurse. Our neighbors silent. She had no idea the storm she'd unleashed. The emergency hearing was set for Friday, but by Tuesday, Oakridge Estates was buzzing. Half the HOA board had resigned, and Valerie's porch rants grew louder. One neighbor saw her burning papers in her fireplace at 3 a.m. Another overheard her trying to rekey the HOA office, despite having no authority. She was doubling down, banking on her few loyalists to save her. Sophie and I arrived at the pretrial with our lawyer, James Carver, a grizzled HOA drama veteran in a faded gray suit, his legal pad crammed with notes like a codebreaker's journal. He was efficient, cracking his knuckles as we entered the Westfield Municipal Building's hearing room. Valerie was there, in a navy blazer with a hawk-shaped pin, her face a mix of smirk and sneer. Her lawyer, a jittery man in a creased suit, shuffled papers nervously. The judge, Grayson, was a stern older man with bushy brows and a gavel he wasn't shy about using. He sighed as he skimmed the files. "Miss Thornton, this hearing is for an emergency injunction and review of criminal conduct related to unauthorized home entry and interference with medical equipment, correct?" Valerie stood, hands clasped like she was accepting an award. "Yes, Your Honor, and if I may clarify." "You may not," he cut in. "Sit." James stood, presenting the case. He played the footage on a portable screen, Valerie entering, snipping the line, leaving with a smirk. He paused on her face, then played Mrs. Evelyn's audio. Maybe this'll teach him not to make the neighborhood look like a clinic. The room went silent, not shocked, but appalled. Valerie's lawyer coughed. "Your Honor, my client believed the equipment was a hazard to the neighborhood's appearance, acting under HOA authority." "Authority," Grayson repeated, "to enter a private home at night and tamper with life support?" She misunderstood the parameters, the lawyer stammered. She cut an oxygen line, Valerie blurted, voice trembling with fake indignation. "I was restoring neighborhood standards. We have rules. If we let one person display medical gear, others will build sheds or carports or—" James raised an eyebrow. "Your Honor, the equipment was inside, partially hidden by blinds, posing no threat to aesthetics." Valerie's mouth flapped. "It was a visual intrusion." "The HOA code." "There's no code," James said smoothly, "that permits criminal trespass or endangering a life." Grayson leaned forward. "Miss Thornton, Do you understand your actions could have caused serious injury or death? This wasn't just illegal, it was malicious. Valerie blinked rapidly. I was under stress. Grayson stared, then turned to James. Is your client seeking damages now, or just protective relief? For now, James said, an emergency injunction barring Ms. Thornton from approaching the Harrisons' property or holding HOA authority until criminal proceedings conclude. Civil damages will come later. Granted, Grayson said. Restraining order issued. HOA authority suspended. Ms. Thornton, you're not to come within 200 feet of the Harrisons' home. Valerie opened her mouth, then shut it. Her lawyer looked ready to disappear. But then, a man in a suit entered, handed Grayson a folder, and whispered something. Grayson scanned it, his expression shifting to amusement. It appears, he said, staring at Valerie, your HOA's insurance provider has canceled coverage. Your unauthorized entry voided liability for the board. Valerie paled. They also note you misrepresented your background when joining the board, failing to disclose a prior fraud conviction. That was sealed. Valerie stammered. Not from insurers, Grayson replied. Outside, the air felt lighter. Sophie squeezed my hand, relief in her eyes. She's spiraling, she said. She'll fight, I replied. She's not done. No, Sophie said, but neither are we. Back home, the Oakridge Estates message board erupted. Residents were livid. Valerie had issued fake fines for years, one for a mailbox color, another for a Christmas wreath, violating decor timelines. That night, Mrs. Evelyn sent another file, Valerie at an HOA meeting, mocking us, calling my oxygen setup a hospital prop. She sneered about keeping the neighborhood from becoming a junkyard. I forwarded it to Ramirez, our lawyer, and anonymously posted it to the forum. It went viral. Valerie's mask was off, and the neighborhood was ready to revolt. Her downfall was explosive. The video sparked outrage. Everyone had a story: fines for invisible infractions, threats over minor decor. A petition to dissolve the HOA, started by a dad Valerie had fined for a swing set, gained 80% signatures in 48 hours. Neighbors shared tales of her tyranny. An elderly couple nearly lost their home over an unapproved ramp. Another got a letter demanding their fence be a calmer shade of gray. Valerie fought back, posting a teary video claiming she was a victim of coordinated harassment. The comments tore her apart. Nobody bought it after seeing her cut my oxygen line. She went from feared to ridiculed overnight. Sophie and I stayed quiet, letting the evidence speak. With James, we froze Valerie's access to HOA funds. She'd spent thousands on untraceable beautification, a statue nobody voted for, cameras on her street only, and receipts from a fancy lunch 40 miles away. The real spectacle came from Mrs. Evelyn. One night, she texted, "Showtime." At 8 p.m., every garage door in Oakridge Estates became a screen. Her drones projected the footage, Valerie breaking in, snipping the line, her voice echoing, "Maybe this'll teach him." Valerie ran out, yelling, but neighbors ignored her. Someone passed popcorn. A kid played Sweet Victory on a speaker. Valerie tried hosing a garage door, tripped, and fell into her azaleas. That clip hit Reddit by morning. She filed a city council complaint, accusing Mrs. Evelyn of technological abuse. But Mrs. Evelyn showed up with a binder of evidence, 5 years of Valerie's infractions. The council voted to audit the HOA and strip its privileges. Then, a bombshell: Valerie's job was fake. She'd claimed to be an urban planner, but a neighbor's digging revealed no credentials, no employment history, just a fraud conviction under a different name. Her lawyer dropped her when she tried countersuing for emotional damages caused by oxygen machines. A few days later, a sheriff delivered enhanced footage from a hidden camera in our motion detector. It showed Valerie rifling through our mail, pocketing a padded envelope, my new medication, a controlled substance. That's a federal offense. Ramirez returned with a warrant. They didn't knock at Valerie's, they walked in. She was packing, suitcases everywhere. The look on her face as they cuffed her, shock, disbelief, was unforgettable. She thought she was above the law. She wasn't. Mrs. Evelyn appeared beside us on the sidewalk, holding cherry pies. She glanced at Valerie's house, then at me. She thought this neighborhood was hers, she said. I nodded. Turns out, Mrs. Evelyn added, it belongs to everyone else. Valerie's trial was a media frenzy. Local news dubbed it the HOA nightmare case. Podcasts dug into her past with crime documentary zeal. The footage of her break-in aired on national TV. One show called it the wildest HOA moment ever. In court, Valerie sat with a new lawyer, dressed in black, makeup subtle, trying to look innocent. Sophie and I sat up front with Mrs. Evelyn and neighbors who'd taken off work to attend. Some brought fake fines Valerie had issued, like one for uneven window blinds. On the stand, Valerie claimed, I believed I was acting in the community's best interest. The equipment might have been a safety risk to kids passing by. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. So you entered a home, cut a resident's oxygen line, and stole prescription medication as community service? Valerie faltered. The Harrisons were hostile to the HOA. I was maintaining peace. Grayson cut in. You believe a man recovering from respiratory failure, using a prescribed device, was causing disorder? Sophie took the stand, her voice steady. I've seen people die gasping for air. When I saw my husband on the floor, pale, shaking, I thought I'd lost him. That tubing was cut on purpose. Someone walked into our home, endangered his life, and thought it was okay because she didn't like how it looked. The jury looked shaken. The verdict was no surprise. Guilty on all counts: unlawful entry, reckless endangerment, mail theft, obstruction. Grayson sentenced her to 18 months probation, 6 months house arrest, a $5,000 fine, and community service with patients on medical support, a poetic jab. The real win came 2 weeks later. The HOA was dissolved. A new resident council formed. No dues, no secret meetings, just volunteers. Mrs. Evelyn was elected chair, her first flyer reading, "In this neighborhood, your oxygen is your business. Welcome back to sanity." Valerie's house went up for sale. She vanished from community events, her home a fortress, shutters drawn, lawn unkempt. No more fines, no inspections. Her era was over. One morning, Sophie and I passed her house. A sign read, "Private property. No trespassing. Protected by law." Sophie smirked. Funny, that's what we said when she broke in. That weekend, Oak Ridge Estates held a No HOA Freedom Fest, barbecue, music, a bounce house. A dunk tank featured Valerie's cardboard cutout. I sat on the porch, my oxygen machine humming, not hidden, just there. Safe. Reporters came for follow-ups. We declined. It wasn't about fame. It was about breathing easy, trusting neighbors, waking up without fear of a clipboard-wielding tyrant. As the sun set, I sat with Sophie, looking at Valerie's dark house. The for sale sign tilted in the breeze. Somewhere in that silence, justice had settled. For the first time in months, I didn't just feel victorious, I felt free.